Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to Don't Be a Basic Biscuit. Today I have a special guest, Dr. Biba Singh, a psychiatrist. She essentially is going to be here to talk to us about why we do the things we do, why we get scared to do the things that we need to do. So Biba, why don't you introduce yourself right now?
Hi, my name is Dr. Biba Singh, and I'm a board certified psychiatrist. I have licenses to practice in the state of New York and California, and I am excited to be here today.
Cool. Thanks for coming, and I appreciate it. Biba's a busy doctor. She's not only a doctor, but she's a sister of mine, and she has to deal with my craziness. So the reason why I put you on this episode is mainly because a lot of what we do is marketing on this podcast, and to do marketing and social media, which you also do actually. So my sister
Mhm.
also does some singing on the side in India, and she's a popular singer there. So a lot of what we have to do is put ourselves out there when we might not feel comfortable to do so. So making videos, sending out postcards, meeting people, going to networking events, walking right up to somebody that you don't know. And so what I want to do is I want to battle the stigma and the fear of doing stuff that you need to do to help you progress in your career. So why don't you talk a little bit about, some of the stuff that our listeners could do to maybe get over that type of anxiety and fear of doing the things that they need to be doing?
So there are two aspects here. One is the aspect of clinically having anxiety or difficulty in crowds or difficulty meeting people. Some people genuinely have the need to speak to a professional and maybe actually be on medication if they feel like it's really limiting their life or giving them trouble in their day-to-day activities, right?
Like crippling
Right,
fear and
exactly.
anxiety.
So if it's crippling, if it's affecting your daily life, if it's like affecting you to the point where you can't go in crowds, maybe you can't go to events, maybe you can't go to the gym or meetings because you feel so much anxiety or stress doing that, that is a separate issue, right?
That's the most extreme
Right.
cases.
However, most of us, it's kind of natural for people who are not really used to public speaking or going to meetings or just going up to a person and introducing yourself or being more out there. So I think the first thing is awareness. So until we are not aware of what we are worried about or what our fears are, we won't be able to face them. So I think that taking a deep breath, sitting down, even journaling or writing down some of your worst fears or what are you worried about? Like, are you worried about being rejected? Are you worried about being made fun of? What is the worst that can happen? And I think identifying those things is very important, right? That's the first step. The second step that we can do is sometimes what we call exposure therapy. So, for example, sometimes we are fearful of certain things, but the more we start exposing ourselves to them, the less it affects us or impacts us. So, for example, like if you're afraid to go into a large room, a lot of people come and tell me, like, we want to go to a group, but we're fearful to go publicly into a group, right? And sometimes I'll tell them, okay, start with a Zoom meeting, an internet group. There are a lot of virtual groups out there, you know? You don't have to have your camera on. You don't have to have your video on. You don't even have to participate. Just try it. And oftentimes they will try that and it will continue to build their confidence in themselves. Like, hey, this is not that bad. The person who shared is somewhat like me, you know? So these are one of the things you can do.
That's pretty good, actually. Biba remembers, me growing up, I was not as outgoing as I am today. And I had to do a lot of these things that challenged me to be a little more proactive in meeting people and getting out there. And so, a lot of that changed when I was in college and I joined a fraternity, and then I became, president of that fraternity. And then there was kids that were in that fraternity that were, that what I had gone through at a younger age, they were going through then. So what some of the advice that I gave them was similar to what you just mentioned, where I would say, hey, look, go out there and wear a t-shirt that you normally wouldn't wear because you think it's weird or silly. So starting small and then realizing that, after you wore that t-shirt, nobody realized anything, nobody cared about it, nobody thought about it. And then that starts like a very small position of putting yourself in an uncomfortable position, and then learning that you could take these small steps into, you know, getting over that type of fear of anything, right? So start small with something and then slowly go higher. So a lot of realtors, yeah, we do have to go to like networking events and meet people.
Yes.
That's the way we have to meet people to get
Right.
new clients, right? And
True.
then also social media. I know so many realtors that have social media, they do not post their photo. And that is it's a very important, the biggest and most important aspect of social media is that people need to get to know you. And if you're not going to put your photo up, you're not going to put videos of yourself up, how are they going to get to know you? They're only going to see your listings and your photos of these houses, but that doesn't allow them to get to know you as a person, which is the main reason that they use someone for being a realtor.
Mhm.
So what are your thoughts on I guess the video aspect, the social media aspect of things?
I think it's the same thing. It's the fear, right? So some people are just insecure, like, oh, I don't look good on camera or I don't look good in pictures, you know? Sometimes sharing that with friends or family or someone that you trust can help, you know? I often do a lot of videos and now I'm at the point where I'm comfortable doing them. But, you know, in my initial days and sometimes even now, I will do something with a video and I'm, you know, afraid or embarrassed or not sure if it looks good. And sometimes, you know, if you have somebody you trust or are, you know, comfortable practicing talking in front of or posting a picture, sometimes like I will say to somebody, let me help you. Let me take a few pictures for you. Let me angle you in the right way. Let me help you with makeup if that's the case, or your hair, or the way you're sitting. And sometimes doing that actually empowers them and say, hey, I don't look that bad in that picture. But you have to ask for help, right? Because we all have fears and we all have things that we're not comfortable with. But if we don't reach out or speak to somebody about it or seek help, sometimes we can't do it. Even the networking events, like it's really worth it to maybe have a buddy or a friend or someone in the industry that you can go to these events with. Even if they're not in the industry, someone that you trust and feel like, hey, can you go with me? And leaning on someone else for help and support. We often don't do that. We often just struggle with our fears within ourselves.
That's a great point, because even when I used to go to networking events, even up until today, I'll bring a friend because it allows you to, you know, fall back on somebody when, let's just say, you're in between talking to somebody. The way I network is I actually go with two people on purpose, and I think this strategy works perfectly, because what I'll do is I'll start a conversation with my friend, and then I'll you know, get the conversation going. We'll be discussing, and then my friend will stay discussing with that person, and then I will find the next person to talk to, and then my friend will follow. So this is actually a way that I do things to maybe at least get them comfortable talking with someone without the part of starting that conversation. And so that's how I've been helping other people in networking events. But actually, that's a great point about social media. Now, you are also, right, a singer in India. And so this social media aspect has become incredibly important for you. And you were not very, you know, I also knew you growing up. You were not very outgoing. You were shy. You were very, you know, worried about being on camera. And so how did you get over that? What was the thought process in your mind that you had to go through to put yourself out there in this whole completely different way than you've ever been normal, you know, comfortable doing?
You know, I think it's positive reinforcement. So you start really small, as you mentioned, right? And you do one thing, and let's just say that it's something that you went to, or you went to an event, or you actually went and successfully were able to talk to people, right? It's actually practicing positive self talk, coming back and saying, hey, you know, let me give myself a pat on the back. I actually did it, you know, celebrating your wins, right? Even if they're small. And I think that even as a psychiatrist or in the medical field, we talk a lot about, you know, working on positive affirmations, positive self-talk. And what that actually does, it's not just all, you know, mythical. There's actually a scientific approach to this because our neural circuits get used to positivity and looking at the glass half full, right? So putting yourself out there relates to this because when you like even social media, for example, maybe in the beginning it was scary or it was, you know, daunting, but you do one step at a time and celebrate each win. And that actually gives you confidence like, hey, I did this and this was not so bad. Maybe I can do this again, or maybe I can do it better. Or I just posted a picture, it came out good. Maybe I could just do like a 10-second talk, you know? Or say a few things. And I think each step, the key to it is not giving up.
Okay. Yeah, no, That's very helpful. And that brings me to, I guess, my next thought, which is what was I going to bring up? I just forgot. How we speak to each other and how we speak to ourselves.
Yeah.
Actually, how we speak to ourselves is an issue, and we speak to ourselves in a very negative manner. And I think we all do it. I think you probably do it from time to time. I do it where we are talking to ourselves like a bully. I feel at times where we're like, you can't do that. Oh my God, you look so stupid. Oh, your butt look big in that dress or something. We talk to ourselves as if we are our bullies. And what I think that we should start doing is start talking to ourselves like you would talk to a friend. Because at the end of the day, you are you are supposed to be there for yourself. And if you can't be there for yourself, that's the worst thing ever. And so talking to yourself, how do you did a little bit touch on that, but what would you do about, speaking to yourself in a more positive way? How do you stop yourself?
Yeah. So it's easy to just say, okay, I cannot talk to myself negative. But the problem is that our mind, we are built with habits, right? So we just immediately go to what we're used to. Like, oh my God, you look so fat. Oh my God, you look so ugly. Oh, you're so stupid. Right. So what I love to do, and I do it myself, is journaling. Absolutely love to journal and make gratitude lists. And even, sometimes I will tell my patients, like, think of 5 things. Anyone can think of 5 things that they're proud of themselves for, or they feel thankful for, or they're good at, It could be as simple as the ability to, help a neighbor in distress. So kindness, or any attribute that you have, or maybe you like your smile. Don't focus on, I don't like the way my butt looks, or I look fat, but like something that you like about yourself, right? And as you write positive things down, a couple of things happen. One, it's in your mind. Then it comes from your pen to paper or typing or whatever. So you're doing an action step to write it down, and then you're saying it out loud. All these things actually help that circuitry in your brain to start thinking more positive and appreciating yourself. And then, it's not just a one-time thing. You should often do that. Sometimes even every day, think of like one positive thing. Keep up, now we have phones, we have apps for everything. We have notes, every day put a note, like one thing I'm happy about, or one thing I feel proud
About
of myself.
yourself.
On
Oh,
yourself, on yourself. It could be the smallest achievement. Like, I wanted to fix, an underwear drawer in my house, and I actually organized it. Or, today I spoke to a person in line at the grocery store, and I let them go in front of me because they were elderly. So I felt like I did something nice for somebody, right? So basically you're focusing more on the positives about yourself rather than the negatives, right? And as you do that, you get into the habit of then trying to look and navigating everything through that lens in your life. And automatically you start speaking, in a positive way. And definitely your approach, 100%. Talk to yourself. Like, what if this was your best friend telling you, don't wear that dress, you look ugly, right? Or you look fat. Would you say that to them? No. You might kindly say, hey, you know what? This dress is not flattering your shape, but that's okay. Remember, I have a beautiful smile. So let me wear something that, is maybe more loose flowing, but maybe focuses more on my face and my,
That's you talking to yourself.
Right. But my point is, like, you're thinking, if you were going to say it to a friend, like, that is horrible, you look disgusting, you look ugly, right? You would never say that to your friend. You would think of it in a kind way. And so you have to think to yourself in a kind way too. Like, okay, fine. Maybe I think I don't look the best in this, but let me immediately shift to a positive thought, and some of this is actually also taught in CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy, which is a different approach. Obviously, it's a more therapy approach, or, going in to see a professional. But you can also buy CBT for dummies at like a Barnes and Nobles or Amazon, and like work on these worksheets, right? What is your negative thought? How can you replace it with a positive thought? So how do you cognitively reframe your thought process? So I'm telling you very general, common, everyday ways, right? But there's a depth to this where you could also do it with a professional. But, a lot of us don't have time for that. A lot of us are busy day-to-day life. So the simple answer is start with a list. Start with journaling or writing down things.
I think that's a fantastic idea, journaling and writing good things about yourself, right? Because
Well,
we oftentimes focus way too much on the negative aspects of ourselves. And
yes.
then we start getting our minds to that portion of that part of our brain that's like, I have nothing good. Nothing is good about me. I suck at this. I suck at that. I talk to so
Mhm.
many realtors and they're like,
Mhm.
yeah, Harv, but I'm nothing like you. Like, I can't put myself out there like that. I'm like, right there. And then I said, yeah, you can't if you have that mentality. I
Yeah,
mean, you're talking so negatively about yourself. And I like that
exactly.
idea of journaling mainly about good things about yourself, because then there's things that you could focus
Yes,
on, right? And identifying them
exactly.
and putting that into your brain. Then you make yourself sit there and you actually think, what are the things that you like? I'm charitable, I'm giving,
Mhm.
whatever, right? That comes to your mind.
Or maybe
And those,
I speak softly, or I'm very kind to people, or whatever it is.
yeah.
100.
And anything, and
Mhm.
going down there and making a detailed list. I really like that. That's something that, I think you brought that is going to be very
Even
beneficial.
little things, like it doesn't have to be, it could be action things. Like, maybe you had a neighbor that was sick and you made them some soup and brought it to them, right?
Yeah.
You might not think that, wow, I did something so great or so special, but, that's a beautiful act, right? It's kindness, it's empathy.
And I'm sure that person appreciated it.
Right. So you have to remember even the smallest things could mean something to other people.
That's good stuff. And
You
I'm
know,
I'm
I
glad that we
I
got you on there.
I one time I remember, of course we're so busy during the day seeing patients and busy with, all our stuff. And I just remember that there was a time where one of my patients was really upset. She had finished her session and well, she was about to go into session, but then we only had a little bit of time to work on our medication and our goals or whatever. But she was like very tearful, crying. She just didn't want to go home. She was in a fight with her husband and she just felt really sad, right? The only thing I did is I said, listen, you don't have to go home right away. We have a little room here with like a little pretty lamb. And I walked over and I made her a cup of tea. Literally, that's all I did. I said, sit in here for an hour, listen to some soft music, have a cup of tea and chill. And this was like 8 years ago. And she still reminds me till this day how much I had helped her that day. To
Wow.
me, it was a
Such
simple
a
cup
small
of
act.
tea. It's not a big deal. I just warmed up some water, threw a tea bag and gave it to her and said, here, chill in here for a while. But she always was like so thankful that I even did that. And so we don't even realize that we do things that are nice every day, right?
So
And
true.
so we have to remember and also appreciate those for ourselves.
You might think you're being a little narcissistic when you're doing this type of exercise, but I think that it's very beneficial because I think it's something that is necessary. And
Because
another thing, yeah,
self-love, we don't love it
yeah,
ourselves enough. And we think it's being selfish or narcissistic or whatever, but actually we all do not have enough self-love. And that's what causes our fears, our anxieties, our insecurities.
yeah, yeah, no, 100% actually. So our father is a psychiatrist, which is why my sister got into psychiatry. And back when he was practicing in like the 1980s,
90s,
80s, 90s, well, he started in the 80s, people would call him a crazy doctor, right?
shrink.
And yeah, shrink or crazy doctor. And there was a negative stigma towards that field. And there are statistics out there that mention that 1 out of 3 people need a therapist. And there is I guess a fight in a lot of people that they don't want to do that. Like, why do I need help? I don't need somebody to help me out. Not saying that people of listening to this podcast need it or not, but maybe some of them do. What would you say as a if there's somebody out there thinking that they maybe want that type of help, how would you advise them, to or encourage them to maybe seek that type of help?
Well, I talk to patients and people about this all the time. First of all, I think we've come a long way. People are more aware, people are more help seeking now. But I think when we think of, you know, depression, anxiety, fear, let's say therapy or even medication, right? Either or both, either one. If you're, let's just say, and I always compare it to like a medical condition, right? Let's just say that you're overweight, right? And you need assistance with exercise and your diet and your nutrition, right? Like you need to have help with a meal plan and maybe what kind of exercises to do, how to like, manage your calories throughout the day. I think that not many people would be like, I'm crazy, I'm stupid, why am I doing this, right? we naturally would be like, okay, maybe I need to work with a nutritionist, or maybe I need to go to the gym and ask somebody for help, right? We don't judge ourselves for something like that. Yet when we need help for our own mental well-being, we're hard on ourselves. And the same thing with, like, let's say, for example, like diabetes, right? Or sugar. Like if you had, or high blood pressure, if you had high blood pressure and yet you're dieting, you're exercising, you're doing everything that you're supposed to do, and yet you still have high blood pressure, would you say, I'm not going to take any medication for this, whatever? No, you're going to be like, okay, I'm doing everything right, but I still want to check in with a doctor and maybe I need some medication. And you wouldn't be embarrassed taking it. You'd be like, well, I'm doing everything I can, but I still need some help. And maybe it's genetics, maybe it's just diet, maybe it's hereditary, whatever it is, but it is, right? So with mental health, right, a lot of things, what people don't understand is that there is a biopsychosocial model. So our mental health comes from partly genetics, like our neurotransmitters in our brain, our serotonin, our dopamine, our norepinephrine, levels that are low or high, right? And just because there's no blood test to tell us that doesn't mean that it's not a biochemical happening in your brain. So that way people don't have to judge themselves. Like, it's not that you're crazy. It's actually something that's going on in your brain that is causing you to feel low or anxious or depressed or whatever, right? Second thing is that when you actually realize that, you have to be open-minded and say, you know what, this is something I need. And another thing, sorry, not to cut off, but another thing is that the biopsychosocial model, so these things that we spoke about, insecurities or not having the confidence, so the biological, psychological, and social. So a lot of things impact us. So for example, psychological, our childhood, maybe our parents spoke to us in a negative way. Maybe we heard growing up, well, you're just messing that up all the time, or you're just not doing good enough, or so a lot of these things are not your fault sometimes, right? And the third thing is social. So for example, 9/11, or, very upsetting circumstances, traumatic events, right? Losses. So all of this affect our mental health. So when somebody just says, I'm not crazy, I don't need to see a therapist, I'm not crazy, I don't need to be on any medication, I think the first step is educating them and explaining, like, this doesn't mean you're crazy, at all. So that's kind of
a lot. That's why I said 1 out of 3 people. And another thing you mentioned was like going to the gym. And if you're going to go to the gym to exercise and give yourself, a healthier lifestyle, I think that you also have to feed your mind positivity, right? So one was journaling, feeding your mind positivity about yourself, or also watching, these, inspirational videos, reading about podcasts,
like
reading about positive things. I think that also helps, right? It's like going to the gym for your body, but you have to kind of fuel your mind with positivity as well.
Yeah. And what I started doing actually, and it actually started this in 2024, so it's really interesting that we're talking about this today, is I started to look up and Google and YouTube sleep affirmations. And there are some really amazing tapes that you could listen to as you're falling asleep for different things, like sleep affirmations for happiness, sleep affirmations for self-confidence, sleep affirmations for getting out of fear, sleep affirmations for loving yourself, right? Anything. You could look up anything for it. And these are positive things that you're hearing while you're sleeping, and they're actually going into your subconscious mind.
And you might even start dreaming about it.
Yeah, or you're just going to realize that you're in a more positive mind frame in general. It's not something you do once. Like you said, it's like mind gym, right? You do it every day or every night, even if it's for 20 minutes, or it could be for the whole night. There are tapes that go on for 8 hours, and there are tapes that go on for 15 minutes or an hour. Just trying to do it every day. I found it helpful for myself. So like writing in a diary, journaling, sleep affirmations, seeing positive things, looking at listening to podcasts. Also, sometimes when we're fearful, negative, a lot of people are like, oh, well, I read the news or I watch TV and I get scared and I'm upset about what's going on in the world. Whatever's going on is going to happen no matter what. We're not going to be able to stop it, right? Like some people are upset about the political situation, for example, or whatever it may be, right? But the more we focus on the negative, the more our mind and our, being will attract it. So I always believe in that like attracts like law of attraction, some of these things, and I really follow some of these things, is that the more,
Self-fulfilling prophecies.
yeah. And even Neville Goddard, I don't know if anyone has heard about him, but I've been reading about his things. Also, he speaks about the law of assumption. So it just assume that everything is going to be okay. You have to have that faith that it'll all work out. So many of us are so scared about the negative outcome. Like, I'm going to go out into that event and something's going to mess up, but maybe start thinking, no, like, I'm going to go there and it's going to be amazing. It's going to be
Neville
fun.
Goddard, you mentioned?
Neville
Okay.
Goddard. I've been listening and watching, I've always loved the law of attraction, The Secret, the books like that, right? And I always have watched podcasts, like listen to podcasts, YouTube, etc. But recently, in the last few months, I really, really also started reading Neville Goddard and listening to some of his YouTube like speeches and videos, and I'm finding them very helpful.
That's good. No, it's good to kind of bring some resources to the listeners as well. So that's kind of cool. So as we wrap this up, are there any final thoughts that you have that, maybe some last shining advice that you want to give to the listeners here?
I think we spoke about it already. I think that just don't be so hard on yourself and reach out for help. Many of us don't seek help. There's so much out there that you can do to get help. And, start small. You don't have to change your life in a day, Start with baby steps.
It's a compounding effect. Every
Exactly.
tiny little changes add up to a big change over a long period of time.
Exactly.
But thank you so much, Dr. Biba Singh, my sister. Thanks for coming on. And guys, as I end all my episodes, don't be a basic biscuit.